Hare Krishna. So regarding the Netflix TV series Adolescence, which has been making waves as describing the impact of the online world and especially the toxic chat groups and such effect on adolescents, especially how it can be destructive, I'd like to offer 3 points using the acronym TIC, TIC. T is the theme. The fact that online radicalization can happen is a very serious problem in society today. Of course, within that, which particular kind of radicalization is depicted can also be a highly political choice, and that can lead to certain criticism. There could be religious radicalization, there could be racist radicalization, there could be gender-centric radicalization. Radicalization, the Bhagavad Gita explains, is in 18.22, knowledge in the mode of ignorance. Yattu kritsnavadekasmin karye saktamahetukam atatvarthadalpam cha tattamasamudaharutam. When we take one thing and make it into everything, when we get some information about some group of people and make it into the totality of everything, that's where it becomes radicalization. Now, in this particular in this TV series, what is being depicted is the radicalization of young teenagers, young males, based on especially gender and racist privileges and against women and other racist groups. As I said, I won't be focusing on that particular angle wherein a teenage boy kills a girl, but I'll be focusing more on the broader theme of what is the impact of such online propaganda on the youth. So that is a very important theme to address, and the idea over here is that when we are exposing our children, or rather we are allowing our children to be exposed to a completely different world of which even the parents have no awareness of, because how much can or should the parents monitor what is happening in the online world for their children, and how long can they monitor? These all raises serious questions. So that's why we move to the point of implication, that the implication is that everyone today is very vulnerable to being influenced by external influences that may be much more influential from the virtual world that we immerse ourselves in than the physical world that we are surrounded by. And why might this happen? I would say there are 3 distinct reasons for this. The first is the physical world around us is often predictable and after some time mediocre and disappointing. The Gita says that this world is dukkhalayam in 8.15. Now this does not necessarily mean that everybody is suffering from soul-crushing pain at each moment. But it does mean that there is a deep existential dissatisfaction with the state of our life and even the state of the world. And that naturally makes us want to look elsewhere. So the natural disappointment with our family, our school, our state of affairs, whatever they might be, is unavoidable. And as compared to that, the online world can seem stimulating, thrilling, always a place of discovery. There are always so much dopamine hits to get. And dopamine hits could be the least of the problematic things we might get over there. So that's the first point, that the online world can appear much more attractive than the physical world. And this can lead to disconnection for everyone. So I saw a cartoon recently where a man is telling his friend that yesterday my broadband Wi-Fi was down, so I spent some time with my family. And they seem like nice people. So it's comic and tragic that a person doesn't even know their own family. And so that's the first point. The second point is that within the online world, also there can be sattva, rajas and tamas. There is a whole educational universe open with so many knowledge sources available. There is so much rajas available in the form of ambition and sensuality and greed and materialism that is being depicted. And there is tamas also available in the sense of there can be hatred and there can be violent pornography, there can be complete bigotry which is being or ideological brainwashing can be done. So all these three are there in the online world, just they are there as they are there in the physical world. And if somehow a person gets exposed to sattva, they can learn and grow in their lives. But if they get exposed to tamas, they can go on a very, very dark path. And that is what is being depicted over here. So the virtual world being a creation ultimately of the human mind, using a lot of technology, but ultimately it's a creation of the human mind, and it will also reflect the variations that the human mind has created in the physical world will also be created in the virtual world. And the third thing is that an especial danger of the virtual world as compared to the physical world is that it is so easy to enter into the darkest regions of tamas without anyone else noticing and without even we ourselves noticing. So, at one moment we could be watching some uplifting darshan in a temple, or we could be hearing a spiritual talk or even a motivational talk, and next moment you just click one button and go onto some very hateful discussion about some completely horrendous topic where some group is being targeted and data is being weaponized to destroy that group, whoever is imagined as the cause of our problems in the world. So that in one sense, when Krishna says Daiviya Esha Gunamai Mama Maya Duratyaya, that the illusory energy is extremely formidable. Now that fearsome power of that illusory energy is aggravated further in today's world because of the ease with which the darkest corners of the human mind can be accessed through the online world. In the 16th chapter, Krishna says, Aneka chitta vibhranta moha jala samavrata prasaktaha kama bhogeshu patanti narakeshu chau. So Aneka chitta vibhranta, the consciousness can be dragged in hundreds of directions, and moha jala samavrata, a person can be caught in a complete net of illusion. Now the internet is actually a net. It is an internationally connected net, but it can also be an intentionally entrapping net in which we can get trapped. Moha jala samavrataha and prasaktaha kama bhogeshu, our desire for some quick pleasure, patanti narakeshu chau, can lead one to hellish conditions. And that brings me to the correction. What can we do about this? So I would say broadly, three things need to be done. First is that alertness. As parents, as caregivers, we need to be alert about how our own relatives, friends are exposed to the online world. And not only for others, it has to be applied to ourselves also. We cannot just think that, oh, my child is safe at home. And maybe safe at home physically, but psychologically they may be devastated. And that's why parents who think that, okay, I can just give an iPad or some device, let my child entertain it on that device. Well, that is not a way, because that can be very dangerous. Now, of course, life is difficult and demanding with so much work pressure and sometimes so much social pressure that giving time to our children is not easy. But that alertness is what is a part of the essential responsibility of parenting. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that every one of us has to do our duty. Loka sangraham evapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. In 320 he says that everyone has to do loka sangraha. We have to play our part in maintaining the world. Otherwise the whole world can disintegrate and collapse. And certainly our own family world and our own children can collapse. So Now, after alertness, and second thing I'll talk about is C is constraints. I'll use the acronym ACT for this, for the solution, alertness, constraints. That means we, while acknowledging that we cannot monitor everything that our children do, still it is important that we place some constraints. The constraints can be technological, the constraints can be philosophical, constraints can be relational. By constraints, I mean boundaries. That it is important for parents to be alert, and because we cannot be alert all the time, just as we won't leave our home door open for any abductors to come and abduct our child, similarly we cannot keep the doors of the internet open for our children's minds to be hijacked by whatever toxic influences may be there in the darker corners of the internet. So now technology can be used for parental control, or more important than that is also that the children need to be educated about the dangers of what can happen in the darkest corners. In the Bhagavad Gita 340 Krishna and 41 Krishna talks about tasmat tvam indriyanyadau. And the senses need to be regulated, and sometimes that regulation has to be done by the self, by we ourselves have to do that, or society, culture, relationships have to create some boundaries by which such restraint becomes possible. So constraints need to be imposed. Now, many of the top tech CEOs and founders of social media are very careful about how much or whether at all they let their children to be exposed to social media. So we need to be extremely careful ourselves. And then last T is transcendence. Now the appeal of the world, a physical world, is always going to pale in comparison with the virtual world. And whatever we create at our home will not be enough to pull the children away from the lure of the virtual world unless we bring an element of transcendence into that. When we connect our children with the spiritual, when we help them connect with the inner guide and guardian who is there in their own hearts, the Lord of our hearts, and provide that as the basis for the inner compass of our children. That is the most important thing we can do as parents for our children, and that is what we can do for ourselves to protect ourselves. So we need to cultivate a wonderful devotional atmosphere at our home, take our children to vibrant spiritual get-togethers where they experience the higher joys of life, and thereby they see that there is a better and richer life available without the need for me to escape into a virtual world. And transcendence also has one vital meaning, that is, we can't let our children get into this victimhood mentality where we start thinking that I am a victim of life, and that particular person is the villain of my life, and therefore I need to destroy that person. Each one of us is a precious part of God, and God is the supreme victor, and He wants each one of us to be a victor. Now, Krishna spoke the Gita so that to Arjuna, as a student, would become the hero. Arjuna would raise his arrow and fight and win. So the Lord wants each one of us to be successful and even victorious in our particular areas of life, in a mood of service to Him. And in fact, the Gita's wisdom is not a call for transcendence simply in terms of getting out of this world and going to a higher spiritual world. It is also of approaching this world with a higher spiritual consciousness, where we see our talents, our interests as gifts given by God for us to make a positive difference in the world. When we share such a transcendental message of optimism, wherein our own success is associated with a higher plan and purpose for life made by the divine arrangement, then we can get such energy and empowerment that the allure of the world above, of the virtual world, will become pale and stale in comparison. So to summarize, I talked about 3 points. The topic, the TIC acronym, the topic itself is concerning and alarming, and it shows how children can get indoctrinated and contaminated, and everyone can. The implications we discussed are how the virtual world will always be more attractive than the physical world, and the virtual world also has sattva, rajas, tamas, and in the virtual world it's so easy to switch from sattva to tamas, and even from tamas to the darkest tamas. And therefore, what are the solutions? I talked about ACT. We need to be alert about what kind of online world we are being exposed to, and our loved ones, especially our wards, our children, are being exposed to. And we need to have constraints, both through social or parental relational imposition, as well as individual intellectual cultivation and conscience development, so that we don't get exposed to dark things. And Transcendence is the ACT acronym, where we need to see and show that there is a richer life available through our devotional connection, where we can be filled with a devotional optimism and a spiritual purpose, making our life in this world into an adventure, where we are not feeling ourselves as victims and looking for villains, but we know that in the service of the Supreme Victor, each one of us can be a victor in making a positive difference in the world. Thank you. Hare Krishna.